Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm Steve Petrucci. I'm the lead programmer with Magical Light Show. This is the beginning 3D layouts, unleashing creativity with xLights. If you've ever attempted to use 3D in xLights or have been scared to use 3D in xLights, that's okay. That's understandable. Normally in my live classes, I always ask for a raise of hands, show of hands. Who's used it, who's familiar with it, who's virtually or who's very scared of it. And it's okay to be all three. However, with today's class, I'm hoping that with the previous class, you can get your you can create your 3D model for xLights. And then once you've created it and you have it and it's ready to go, now you can start building your layout in 3D. Is 3D necessary? No. In some instances it is, but can you build a very nice layout in 2D? Yes, you can. We often use 2D for the majority of our work, but we do have some displays that require us to use 3D as well as a mix of both 3D and 2D. So let's go next slide. Let's make sure, there we go. Like I said, I'm Steve Petrucci. I'm currently in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Lead programmer. Tom is actually that short. You may have seen or heard, but Tom is on the shorter side. That's okay. We all still love him. Yes, I do have a cool job. And I do have a bachelor's and master's degree in music. So you can reach me if you have any questions at support@magicallightshows.com. You can also reach me via Facebook Messenger, Steve Petrucci on Facebook. Today, this is going to be a few slides of PowerPoint, but then we're going to just jump right into actually navigating in xLights. And if you have questions, please ask them. Please put them in the chat. But then as we go through, if there's some things that I'm not covering, but you have had issues with, I will try to answer. Will I know every answer? No, because it's such a powerful software, powerful tool. I just don't know everything, but from my experience, I would be able to help you as best I can. So today we're going to look at and understand how to navigate in 3D. That's our biggest obstacle to overcome, quite frankly. Then we're going to discover the most common tools needed to build your layout in 3D, and then learn some shortcuts to be more efficient while working on your layout. I'm going to go through the PowerPoint first. It's only a few slides. If you want to screenshot it or snap a picture with your phone so you have it as a visual guide as we're going, once we get into xLights, by all means, I encourage that. And hopefully this PowerPoint will be available after the fact if need be. So why 3D? I discovered this, or I discussed this in the last class. It allows for more accurate scaling of your display. If you have a 2-foot snowflake, it will actually look like it should against your house versus being too small or too large. Create multiple viewpoints from different angles, which I will show you. And then see what your audience will see. That's one of the tools that I really enjoy seeing. My previous house, I had 2 smaller trees on the corner of my property, so therefore I could kind of turn my angle a little bit to see what it would look like if you're driving down the street and you're sitting down the street a little bit. See, do I need to move things left or right, front, center, whatever I need to make it more enjoyable for my viewers. So now, how do I move things in 3D? First thing, right-click reset. This is huge. This is the one thing. If you only learn one thing from this class or remember one thing, please remember this. You will get disoriented in 3D. You will lose your spot. You will not figure out where your house is. You will not know where something is. Right-click on your mouse, click on the reset button. I promise, click on the reset button. It's not going to blow up your computer. I promise it's not going to delete anything and everything off of xLights. All your hard work you've done for the past few years will still be there. All it's going to do is reset your viewpoint, which I will show you in a moment. So please remember, right-click, reset. Navigating in 3D, we're going to use the mouse wheel a lot. The mouse wheel will zoom in and out on an object or the area you're looking at. Mouse wheel pressed will move your view up and down and left and right. If you left click, it will then spin around the object. And once again, right click, reset. let's skip over now to xLights. Now we're in xLights, and I'm going to do a couple of different things. We've already brought in our model. So from the last class, we added an OBJ. We brought in the mesh, the object. Here is my show folder. And then my object is within that folder as well. Okay. What you see are the models that I've already created for my display on my house this year. I'm going to move some of these around and kind of show you just some different tricks on how to make it more efficient and how to, scale these accordingly to your project. But the first thing I said is right-click reset. So I'm going to go way out. I have no clue where my house is. I'm spinning out here in the ether. Don't know where I am. This always confused me and always made me most frustrated when using 3D. Then I quickly learned right-click, shortcuts, reset. Boom, gets me right back to my default view. So I set this as my current viewpoint as default. Excuse me. What this does, it brings me back to here after I reset. It's here, I'm way over here, I'm underneath the house. How do I get back to here? Right-click, reset. I promise it will save you tons of time and frustration to remember that one shortcut. That one shortcut. Let's see, what was the other thing? Yes, zoom in, zoom out. If I want to look more inside my home, closer to an object, I'm going to push the wheel forward. Sorry, I'm going to spin the wheel forward to zoom in, and to come out of it, I'm going to pull back on the wheel to go backwards. Okay, walk towards it and walk away from it. Pushing down the mouse wheel will now take the entire display and move it which direction you choose to go. So now I'm pushing kind of forward and up, moves it away from me, pulling the mouse closer back towards me, drops it lower, and then left and right. I want to reset it. Boom, gets me where I want it to be. And then if I hold down the left click is when I can rotate around my object, around my display, look in from the inside, etc. Okay, so a few different things on how we're going to navigate through xLights first and foremost. All right, remember, right-click reset. Please, please, please. That will save you tons of time and frustration. Now, how are we going to move, and why is this important? So how do I move in 3D? First, the green arrow is your y-axis. That's the vertical. That's moving it up and down by simply holding onto this arrow and moving it, pulling it up and pulling it down. Red is your x-axis, your left to right, your horizontal. Your blue is your z-axis, is your front to back or your depth. Now, in the middle of each object and model is an orange cube. All right, this orange cube, you select it, it will change between these three options. The default comes up as the arrows. That's how you physically move the object within your layout. The cube is the second selection. That's how you can resize it. I want to show you a different way to resize it in a moment, but you can use these cubes to resize. Selecting the orange cube a third time will now give you your arches, which can now spin and turn your objects front, back, center, etc., etc. And I'll show you why that's useful in a moment. Okay. Oh, wrong thing. And then we're going to also discuss the ruler function, which I will show you. Come back to that. Let's go here. Boom. All right. So now where did my mouse go? There it is. I want to show you how to pull the models in and how to align the models in a little bit, but first I'm just going to navigate on how we move things around. So I'm going to select my singing tree here. And I'm just going to come up, just drop it down here where it's black so we can kind of see things. Zoom in on it. So now we have this cube. All right, so if I select this cube, this orange cube, it's giving me the different options. So by default, if I click over here, it's not selected. I want to select it. It gives you the square within where this object is located. Select it once. Default gives you the different arrows, the three arrows. up and down, left and right, and then the depth, forward, back with the blue, okay? Now, if I want to spin, what I can do, or if resize it, I can use this to make these bigger, et cetera, et cetera. But I can also change it over here in my properties for dimensions, which I'll get to in a little bit. Now, if I want to spin it, let's say if I need it to go at an angle, boom, I rotate it on my blue axis, boom, there you go. If I want to now rotate it so it's leaning back, or side to side, sorry, then I can use my green axis. Now, if I want it to lean back, let me pull back here a little bit. You'll be able to see it kind of dip backwards. A little tricky, just because of what I'm doing with all this. Let's go Control Z, put me right back to where I needed. That was fast. All right, so now it's there. It's a little messed up. Nope, it's good. Okay. Now, as we're navigating through 3D, we want to make sure that we understand that we're now using three axis points. Sorry about that. What I'm doing right now is I'm actually in 2D going back and forth between. So if I want to select all of these, I could go to my all group, select all, but now I can't move them. There's not one object as my central object to move, which will move them as an entire group. So what I'll do, deselect it. I'll go to 2D, draw the box around everything by left clicking and drag the dotted box around, go back to 3D. Now what I can do is use my model here to move everything. So what I'm going to do is just double click this, make sure it's what I need. Yep. I'm not holding anything down. In 2D, if you want to move a group of objects, you need to hold down your command or control button. In 3D, you don't. What I'll do is I can just move them all up, out of the way, or whatever I need. Okay. So for instance, now we're just going to move them all up. Okay. Just get them out of the way. So now we have a blank slate. Okay. So I'm going to pull these down in a moment. Now, with 3D, I want to show you next the ruler function. Okay. Let's go back first to here so you can see what it looks like. To get the ruler function, we're going to go to our 3D objects. So beside the model, in the models window, you have the 3D objects. So you have your grid lines, your mesh, which is most likely your house, your building, and then we're going to add a ruler. You're going to select Add OBJ, select Ruler, and then we're going to place it on an item that we know the length of that area. So now let's go back. You will not see the ability to add object for my ruler, simply because it's already being used. You can only have one ruler per layout because you can only detect one area of reference for length. So I've selected ruler, boom, it brings it in. Now here's my ruler. Right now you can't see it because it's not active. It will be active by default when you bring it in. All right, so now you see it. It will appear as a purple magenta line. And so what I've done is I put it on my front window and I've changed the units to inches. I did mistakenly one time use feet, and that was a very big hassle because then I would have to convert everything to like 1.2 feet, 1.5 feet, 1.11 feet. And so I would highly suggest you do typically inches, or if you need to use centimeters, whatever is best for you, do it. For me, I select inches. So therefore, I know that the width of this window where the glass is 29 inches. So I put 29. Now, the one thing that will not occur in xLights 3D that I know of, I've never seen it adjusted, I don't know if it's physically possible. In other softwares, you can, other 3D modeling softwares, if you change your scale, so this is what's creating our scale, it will automatically adjust the size of everything else. It will not in xLights. You have to manually do that for everything. So if I determine that this is 29 inches, what will happen, it will then, I have to manually go in and tell a snowflake that it's 24 inches by 24 inches. But then if I come back and change this to 30 inches, it will then increase the size of the snowflake in the dimensions area to, maybe 25, but it's not going to physically change it. And so that's one thing you just got to keep in mind, that if you do change this later on, you're going to physically go in and change all your models again, as far as the size and the dimensions of it. All right, so that's the ruler function. Now I'm going to show you on what we want to do when we're placing an object on a house. And the ruler is a good example. So right now I'm navigating up underneath the house. You can see that the ruler is actually sticking out from the window a little bit. If I come inside, you can't see it. I'm sorry if you're getting disoriented. I apologize. All right, but what we want to do is put this ruler as close as we can. Sorry, let me select the ruler again. To the house without it going through the house, because in 3D, you're now working on multiple planes. So I'm going to push this back. So now it's moving a little bit more than I want it to. It's gone. So what I'll do is I'll pull this back a little bit, and I could even go in and adjust the angle of it if I want. So now what's going to happen? The center cube moves the entire thing, where if I select any other side cubes, I can now just pull this point by itself, so it will rotate on the opposite point. So I'll pull this forward, boom. And so now it's probably a little straighter. Select it. There we go. So now we're moving through the window together versus one side going in first. So here, it's actually in. There, it's pretty close. If I come out here, I'm about 3 feet in front of it. But if I look at it from this perspective, it looks like it's against it. So as we build this layout, I will show you that it's important to make sure you understand you're looking at from 2, 3 perspectives. So you're going to have the front, the side, and the top view of all your models to make sure that they're lined up where they should be. Because if not, they can end up being 4 feet in front, and then you got to resize it, and it's not quite exactly what you want it to look like. And so, all right, so let's go back here. Let's just recap. So we've used the ruler function. We've created the ruler. Add the OBJ. We placed it where we want it to be located within a certain object on our house, whether it's a front door, a window, the width of your garage door, whatever you know is there and you know the exact measurements of it, use that. And obviously use something that's easy to get to. Something that's ground level, doesn't require you to get on a ladder. They always think safety first. And then you want to add in the units of measurement. So for me, it's going to be inches, and then whatever the real length is, which is 29. You can use this function in 2D. You can. It's a little bit, you can do that. It's not quite as accurate, but you can. So for instance, I know that even if I had this was just a 2D photo of my house. Let's go back here. I can say, all right, I know that this is going to be 29 inches. I come back over here, and then I can still use all of my functions here, dimensions, to fit as needed. Okay, and it will change it. So let's go back to 3D. Now we've created our ruler, and now we're ready to build. I would suggest you always put your ruler in first, get it accurate, and then bring in your models. If you do your ruler afterwards, you can. That's still not a problem. It's not going to hurt anything. It's just going to cause, you just have to do a little bit more work after the fact, just because now you got to go back. And what looks like the correct size, this will actually make it fit to scale according to your model. And so, so some shortcuts. This will be our last slide. before we stay on to xLights for a while. But some of the shortcuts we'll cover will be how can I, when I highlight two or more models, I'm going to right click and then use the align shortcuts, the distribute shortcuts, and the resizing shortcuts. So align, I'm going to place some models on the same plane a little bit quicker. Then I'm going to distribute them, create equal intervals between the models. And then we're going to resize, match size. We'll quickly adjust the size to match the highlighted model, just so you know. And these are different examples of screenshots of what you'll see momentarily. So any questions so far before we actually get into building a layout? Any questions? No, let me see if I get chat up here. Any chat? No chat. Okay, perfect. All right. So we're going to build, let's put some things on here. At Magical Light Shows, when we build a display, we like to make sure we try to enhance the aesthetics of the property, of the house, of the property that's surrounding it. That's what we try to do. We don't want to cover every single square inch of the building. We try to enhance it. So for instance, if I have a 48-inch snowflake, I will find a spot to put it that will look good for that 48-inch snowflake. So for my house, I wouldn't necessarily put it up here on this top window because it's going to be covering the entire thing and it would look out of place. So maybe I could fit it here on this peak or over on this blank wall. So just so you know, from an aesthetic standpoint, what we will do is create a display, a layout that matches what's happening on that object. Now, for you as a homeowner, as someone who's building this, putting this layout together, also take into consideration safety. So for me, I will put these up, my outlines on my top peak, but then I'm not going to put anything else on the roof. I can get to this pretty easily, and I feel comfortable dropping a single line down there on each side and being done and getting and moving myself off the roof. This window I can access from the attic, so I can reach inside to put something outside. But if you don't feel comfortable putting something up here, then don't. Be safe. Always be safe with what you're doing. And if you only decorate the first half, or sorry, the lower half, the first floor of your display, that's fine. That's completely fine. If you choose to hire someone locally to come in and install the lights for you up on top, that's fine too. As long as you feel safe and comfortable with what you're doing, that's the most important part of the game. So, all right. So now we want to bring in some models. So let's go up here. We're going to do the download model or download button, bringing in all the windows. Let's bring this up here so you can see it. So we're going to go to Boscoya. We're going to use the 3-prong fancy. That's what we typically use for everything. And there it is. Now, what's new with xLights here recently, the past 1 or 2 updates, is you can now download one, the approximate size, and then 2, on the plane that you want to download it to. So now I've turned my model to the right. Once again, let me bring this up here so you can see. I'm going to download the same snowflake, and it should put it on the right side of my house. There you go. It's a little farther away. Let's move it. But as you can see, compared to this snowflake, so sorry, I'm trying to get to where you can see it. They're on a different plane. All right. So one is on X, one is on Y. And now we can see when you go in and you want to decorate in a 3D model, this side of your house, it's more efficient for you. So for today's purpose, I'm not going to, just because I don't decorate the sides of my house just yet. But I will show you one thing that we use in xLights for 3D that will make using 3D much more valuable than 2D when it comes to effects. So
Steve, how did you get it to do the other plane? I didn't necessarily catch that.
So I just simply turned my object to the side.
Okay.
So it detects which way I'm facing.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
And that was it. So download, draw the box.
Nice and simple. Got it.
Cool. And then let's do a 40 bigger snowflake. So now we got a 40. We'll do the big one. 96-inch snowflake coming in. Sorry, I'm on a different screen. Oh, it's still the same size. So now you can see that it's perpendicular to the house this way. And so, which is nice. Yeah. Make it a little bigger so you can see it. And so there you go. So this is the first model I brought in. I was facing the house, and then the new model I brought in, I want to put on the side, like my garage. I look and face it, and then it gets dropped in on that plane, which is nice. So, and that is just recent. So I've not played around with too much, but that is a big, big help to us. Because if you saw our videos from last year on Tom's new house, we had to build his layout in 3D simply because of he has multiple angles on his home compared to his previous house. So we had to build it in 3D. And trying to build it last year, everything I had to bring in, like if you remember, we had smaller singing bulbs on the peaks of his roof. And what we had to do was I would bring them in on this plane and then have to rotate each single one around and then move it and get it in place. And so it took more time, whereas this would be much easier. Now, if you copy and paste, Control C or Command C, it will automatically put it on that angle, that plane that you want after you've adjusted it, which is nice. And so we'll talk about this in a moment. Let's go back. There we go. So what I just did, I undid. So I went in and what are you doing to me? There we go. Hit Control Z or Command Z, and it will undo the previous function, and it will go back a certain number of functions if needed. And now I use that a lot. Control or Command Z, depending on Windows or Mac. And that's good for your layout and in the sequencer tab too. So let's put this model. Let's scale it and let's put it on the house. So I want to put this on my roof line. So I'm going to go over here to all my data for my model. So if you're familiar, you have all your data regarding the model itself, any faces, any states, any submodels, etc. For this, what we're going to do is go to dimensions. Under dimensions, now we have our width, our height, and now depth. We do have depth now that we're in 3D. This is important because of how we will align our models in a little bit. So for this instance, I know it's a 24-inch flake by 24 inches. So I would simply select and change the numbers. And then this one here, it is not 428 inches deep. Doesn't matter, not from a viewing standpoint, but where it does matter is from an alignment standpoint. So for efficiency when you're building your layout. Building a layout in 3D does take longer than in 2D, simply because of you got to size it correctly and then move them into place. It does take longer. Do you have to use 3D? No. Is it more beneficial in some ways? Yes. But for me, personally, for my house, I like to have it in 3D. But could I do this without it? I could. But I just like using 3D. I started with 3D 3 or 4 years back, and I've just always kept using it. Last year, we were in a rental home. I built it all in 2D, and then I had my arches out front and everything. And so they were actually fans. So what I did is I actually just built it in 3D without using an actual model. And so for rendering it rendered better, more effectively than if I had it in 2D. So, but for this case, sizing, I always tell people put 1 in for your depth for everything, because I will show you right now. Now, when you're bringing in a model, if you have a model that has submodels and they're listed in groups as such as folders. So you see up here, I got a Rosa wreath as an example, all the way up here. If you have, let's say you have 2 of those, what you want to do is download each individually, and it will merge your submodel folders together. Whereas if you copy and paste it, it will not. So just keep that in mind. However, for me, like for instance, I use from EFL the Showstopper Snowflake. Those do not, the submodels there do not have folders. So therefore, when I bring this in, if I had two of them, it would not create two folder or multiple folders of my submodels. So just because it doesn't use folders for submodels. So that's also something just added this year. So, but keep that in mind. That's something a little bit more advanced. But for what we're doing here, I want to use copy and paste. So I select it, Command C or Control C, and then Control V, and it pastes it. Why it's doing all this pink, magenta, I don't know. I'm thinking, or I'm assuming it's just thinking and rendering. So I guess that's what's happening. Now, so this is my second snowflake. You notice the dimensions match 24, 24, and 1 compared to here. Okay, 24, 24, and 1. But let's say this was different. Let's go over here and let's say this was 26 by 26 by 300, something random. Okay. As you can see, the depth doesn't matter from when you're looking at it on the model or on the layout, but I will show you where it does matter. So let's look at shortcuts. Let's just get this out of the way. So what's going to happen? So this is the model that I want to use. Let's just make this even more ridiculous. 40 by 25. Nope. But I'm going to make sure you see it by 5. So it's really ridiculous. You see that this is supposed to look like this snowflake, but it doesn't. So what we're going to do, I want to select the snowflake that I want to use as my template. This is my default size. I select it, hold down the Command or Control button on your computer, and now I can select any other models that I want. So now I have these two selected. Like I said, we have the shortcuts by right-clicking. I'm going to right-click. First thing I'm going to do is resize. Come down to resize. You can match the width, you can match the height, or you can match size. What it does not give you is match depth. Okay. So what I'm going to do is match the size. Now, let's make sure this is 24, 24, 1, and this is 24, 72, 24, 78, 24, 72. It's pretty close, but it's not exact. But if you noticed, I'm okay with it being 24 and then 24 and 3/4. I'm okay with that because it's hard to distinguish the difference once you put it on here. That's okay. Where I'm not okay with is the depth. The depth is off by almost 2 feet. If you notice, I have them both in line right now. So they shouldn't move. I want to say, you know what? I want to align, right click. So select them both, align. And I want to say, I want to align the front. They should, all right. If you noticed, the one that was in front moved back. And the reason is the front of it is actually 2 feet to the front. You can't see it visually because it's not moving 3-dimensionally, as in the actual object on the model is not a 3D object. It's just 2D. But what happened is, if I change this to 500, and I go here, select. Oh, all right, so what's happening? Sometimes it will kind of just freeze on me where I can't select this. So I'll deselect, come back and select it again. Boom. So I double clicked. There you go. I got to find it. No. Now, if I right click, grid lines, I'm just turning my grid lines off so you can see it a little better. Select the first one. Then I'm going to right click, align the front. And now notice the difference. What's happening is the front of this model is actually what I put 500 dimensions is 500 inches in front of it. So it's actually this in the front of this, they are aligned, but it's aligned according to the depth. So that's why I say when you go in, always check the depth of your models. You may need to adjust them after you've resized, but what will happen now is they should, in theory, align, right click, align front together. As you can see, now they're on the same plane front to back. So once again, if you go through and you're trying to align them front to back and they're not quite aligning up front to back, it's going to be because of depth. That's where the issue arises. Some folks say you don't need to worry about it, which is true. You don't need to worry about it from a model aesthetic standpoint. But if you're going to use the shortcuts for anything to do with a line front to back, you will need to make sure that the depth is the same on everything. So what I tell people is just do 1 inch, or just use the same 1 inch, 10 inch, 100, whatever you choose to do. And that will make life easier for you. Now, a couple other shortcuts. So I did a copy and paste to get this second snowflake in. But now what happens is I want them to be on the same plane, on to align them on the bottom or the top. So I want them to be left to right the same. So I'm going to say I want them to be on the bottom. Now they're together. So what happened is that moved this snowflake upward to align the bottom of the snowflake to the bottom of the snowflake that I had selected. And so now what I can do, I'm not holding any buttons down on my mouse or on my keyboard. You can select, as long as they're yellow, you can select the entire group and move it as a whole, which is nice. So now what we'll do is I'll just get it somewhere near where I want it to be. And as I see that the white square around my model starts to disappear, I know I'm getting close to my actual physical roof. Now, as I get closer, now all of a sudden my snowflake is disappearing, and now it's through my roof and my porch, now underneath my porch. So I want them to be just above, probably about a foot or so above my actual shingles. Okay, so there they are. Now I need more. So this is snowflake 2, copy, paste. Goodness, why is it doing that? Okay, hope it doesn't crash on me. And now we go. So it's always, whenever you paste, it's always going to drop to the right and down. So it's never going to be on the same plane. That's the same thing for 2D as well. So, but now I just want to have 5 of these on this roof line. Okay. Now, if I look, they're on the same plane front to back, which is great. Okay. But now I want them to be spread out evenly along this line. So instead of going in and saying, okay, let's put you here and let's take this one and let's move you here. I think that's where I want it to be. Instead of going individual flake by flake or model by model, what we can do is place our outer 2 models where we want them to be. Come back. Let's put you here or there. If you're familiar with, if you have any experience with marching band, I used to teach, taught high school band for 10 years. So therefore, I designed and taught a lot of marching band, judged a lot of marching band in my lifetime. One thing we would do is always match your intervals between you and the person to your left and person to your right. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to make sure here our starting point and our ending point. And now what we're going to do is select everything in between. And I'm going to say right click, distribute horizontal. Now is what it's going to do. It's going to align them with all the intervals being equal. You notice the inner 3 shifted, the outer 2 stayed. And I'm going to come down here. They all look pretty equal with equal spacing. I moved them up here just so you can see the spacing in between. So, which is nice. That back. But now, let's say I wanted to put these. So now I have the snowflakes staggered a little bit. Okay, so we'll move them all down a little bit closer to the front of the thing of the roof. But now I want to push these back. So what we'll do is I'll select them both. The intervals are the same, which is nice. as I push them back, they go into the roof line because the roof line is angled and these are going perfectly straight back. So hit them here. And now I want to move them up a little bit. So now there's some depth to my design, to my layout. Okay. Now, one thing I may want to do is select. You notice these are not perfectly in line on the bottom. The line bottom. Let's see if it adjusted. And now it brought this one up to match the one that I had highlighted. So, okay. Any questions so far? Anything up here? Let me check this chat. Nothing. Okay, cool. If you think of any questions you may have here in about 10 minutes or so, we'll open it up so you can ask, even if it's something I have not covered and you've come into any issues, please feel free to ask, even if it's maybe a little bit more advanced, be more than happy to help you. So, all right, so now let's say we've built our display. All right, and we'll get in here to a few different things. I'm going to delete all these. So I've showed you how to bring in a model and how to align it according to your layout. So what I'm going to do now, let's select you and get you, Control Z, get you out of here. Boom, get that. So I'm in 2D, I've selected all. Now 3D, while I'm doing this, it makes it easier for me to move all of these as one whole group versus having to go through and individually select them. So I'm sorry, this doesn't look great. There we go. It's about where we want it. And so, all right. So now we have our display built and we're getting to the idea of using 3D for our layout. A few different things we can use in 3D that's nice is my house is on a hill. You can't see it here, but let me bring in my grid lines again. Okay. So the grid lines would be the top of my hill. The viewpoint for my audience is actually probably more about right there. What's nice in 3D is I can now, if I have all of these up here, okay, it looks great. Perfect. No, it looks awesome. I love what I'm doing there. But now, you know what? What does it look like from the ground, from where the street level is? So for me, my arches are covering what's behind it. My mini trees and my candy canes. From up here, from the neighbor's yard across the street, which is also on a hill, they look great. But down here, about 15 feet down, they're covering. And I don't want that. So what I'll do is I'll make sure that I drop these down a little bit lower. So they're more or less on the hill, not blocking what's behind it. And so it's always good to try to make sure you're not blocking something that's behind a model. Sometimes you just can't. But that's when we're designing layouts for magical light shows and our clients, like I said, we always try to aesthetically enhance the building. So therefore, we're not going to put our singing trees in front of the mini trees and candy canes. Arches are typically fine if you're doing like a 6-foot arch, because you can see most of it. But just keep that in mind when you're building a layout. You want to make sure everyone can see all your hard work. So make sure you don't try not to cover anything up. So now in xLights, in 3D, we can create different viewpoints. So for instance, if I want to use 3 dimensions of my home, so I've added, this is not what I'm doing, but I've added it for the purpose of here. If I have this wall as a matrix, where I put a matrix on my right side garage door, then what happens when it renders in xLights, simple bars effect on the all group. All right, looks great going on front to back or side to side, no big deal. Everything's lit up how it should be. It's hitting it as it gets there, boom, boom, boom. That's great. But now if I turn around, the matrix is lighting up as a single pixel. It's because it's seeing it as it's on the front plane here as one light. Now, how do we fix this? Great question. What we'll do, we'll go to layout. And I want to make sure that this gets treated differently in, in some of my groups. Now, if I were to sequence just a matrix by itself, it'll be fine. But when I add it to a group on a different plane, we need to create views. So what I'll do is I'll come to the side, and I don't have to select it. If I'm looking at it from an angle, I'll right click, and I want to save current viewpoint. So what I'll do is I'll save this as garage. All right. And we say duplicate, sorry. Okay, let's say something else. We'll do side VCS. Okay. And now it's saved. So what will happen, I can go back here. I can load different viewpoint. I can say reset, gets me to the front. As if you're looking down from the sky. That's kind of where I am. Different viewpoints that I've created. For me, for instance, camera across the street, as if you're looking at it from my neighbor's front yard. And then also street center, if I'm down on the street, so different viewpoints. But what I just created was side VCS. So what we'll do now is we'll go to our sequencer. It's loading that viewpoint where we just left. And once you're in 3D in the sequencer tab, you can load these viewpoints. So if I have camera across the street, it shows me what it would look like I said, across the street on my neighbor's front porch. What we just did, what we just created now, the side VCS, boom, go back to the bars effect, and it's still treating that side, that matrix, as a single pixel. It's all lining up at the same time. How to fix this, what we'll do, so it's rotated 90 simply because I want it to go side to side. Up and down, it's completely fine, but I'm going to turn it 90. So now you see it as 1 pixel. But what I want the bars effect to start here, go around the corner. Now what we can do is go to per preview, camera. Select camera from 2D to any of my views that I have created. So if I select side, now what's happened, the bars effect is starting from this back corner, going all the way through the matrix, and then moving across the front of my display. So where this is good is especially if you have a corner lot, if you have a lot that's on the side, or if you're decorating the front and the side of your building, if you have a let's say a layout, if you're doing a commercial scene and you have multiple buildings within a park setting, and you're doing creating something to move through all of those buildings as a whole group, like what we have here, then this is what you would use. We had to use this quite frequently with Tom's last year, because from a default standpoint, the shock waves from the center of the house did not go towards where our cameras were staged. So we had to create a view and always use per preview. So if you were to go in and you downloaded one of our sequences that came to you using, for instance, the Call of Duty sequence from last year, a lot of the all or house effects were based on per preview and the camera angle that we adjusted, or the angle, the camera view, which was, I think, labeled camera or center camera. So sometimes if you get where it's coming from you from a sequencer that's in 3D and the per preview and has this camera specifically set up for that display, you may have to go in and either change it to default or create, if you're in 3D, your own camera view like we just did, to make sure it renders correctly on your layout. So this is one big thing that a lot of folks can't figure out what's going on and why. So if we go back to 2D, as you can see here, it's still seeing a single pixel. If I go to per model default, see, it's treating it as a general bars effect because it's treating each model how it should look by default. And so now if I go back to default itself, single pixel, red, white, and blue. I don't want that, so I'm going to change per preview. Come back to camera, select my angle, and there you go. And so now, therefore, you're getting the effects that you want starting in the corner that you want it to be versus just a single pixel. So, any questions?
There's one in the chat from Bill.
Let's go look at it real quick. All right, so Bill is asking, I've noticed that when sequencing, there are some elements in my display that will not appear in the model preview window. I have to zoom in or out tons of times to see quickly pass through the preview window. It's just a bug or something that I did when I set up the model that makes it display preview. It seems to be mostly the items that are. Okay, I'm trying to figure out what this would be. Bill, can you unmute and explain a little bit what's happening when you have this?
So I have my display in 3D,
Okay.
and so my angel wings would be far left at street level. So they're like far left bottom corner. And if I go into the visualizer and I just click on any of the effects for the angel wings, I see nothing in the model preview window. It's totally black. And so I found that if I can, actually the guys in the Zoom room, I don't remember who it was, said you just need to scroll way out or scroll way in till you see something, and at that point you can zoom in on it, but it doesn't remember it, and it seems to be consistent with the stuff on the exterior corners. And I didn't know if I had something set up incorrectly, or if it was just something that's part of the 3D, just hasn't, I don't know.
I'm trying to think, because in model preview, it doesn't look 3D, it's only in 2D. What you could try doing is either updating or going back on xLights to the version. You can then try re-importing your your respective prop, whether it's the angel wings or something else, and see where it is. Now, I have noticed in the past for me something similar where I would use I'd be in with multiple previews. So, for instance, if a drive-through we'd be working on, some of the scenes would be in 3D, like I have here, but then some other scenes where I could just build in 2D, like if I had a building with some singing faces on it, whatever. I would notice occasionally that my singers would also be showing up on a different preview, which probably a different preview window. So something similar to what you're saying. Now yours are kind of hidden, you can't find them. But I noticed that they would go from, like, all of a sudden I'd be looking at a preview with, instead of 3 singing bulbs, now all of a sudden there's 6 of them, but there shouldn't be. And at that time, it's just a bug. So it could be a bug. I've never ran into that issue where I have the model preview, or let's go down here. Let's go.
I'm wondering if it might be related to groups, because it seems like everything I do this with and have this issue, it's a group that I'm looking at. So like this in my angel wings, for example, I will map them as a group that's angel wings both. So I might put a spiral or something on the angel wings, and I have a group for both of them together. And it seems to be the groups that are causing the problem on the periphery. Now, I'll have to go back and test that just to make sure, but it's really weird. And I thought maybe there was something I had set up incorrectly with the depth or the width or the height or something, but it doesn't appear that that's the case. So we can go ahead and move on.
Any questions? Yeah. Yeah, feel free to reach out to me either at my email, support@magicallightshows.com, or on Facebook Messenger. We can certainly figure out what this, because I have the wings as well. So we'll see if there's an issue with it. So.
Steve, Mike S is next.
All right, where are we? Let's see.
Mike, you can speak up if you can unmute your camera. Your microphone.
Yeah, I was just wondering how to apply that to like imported sequences. It seems like it would be a big pain if you have to go to every single group effect and do that per preview change.
You're
trick
right,
to that,
but
or-
let me show you a quick shortcut. This doesn't have to do necessarily with 3D, but it's okay. It's not a problem. So if I have, oh yes, I know. Let's just do this. Okay. These are all, let's say this is a song that's 4 minutes long and there's 100 of these. Okay. I could go in and individually select. So I select the first one, hold down Control or Command, keep selecting as needed, blah, 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 blah. What I will often do is pull up another window. So I'll go to my window, View. I'll go to Windows, and I'm going to select Effect. All right. Now, this is, for instance, I do this if I know what the effect is. So this isn't quite 100% answering your question, but it's somewhat related. So if I need to, for instance, show where all my shaders are being, where they're looking towards what folder, then I use this quite often. But for instance, here, if I wanted to go in and I have, oh, I'm in the wrong box. So down here, select effect. This will give me all my effects that I have built into this sequence, whether it's used 1 time or 1,000 times. It's all going to be here. What I can now do is select all, or I can select them by individual times. What I'll do here is just select all, and it highlights everything. So now I don't have to go in and individually select each thing individually if you need be. Now what I can do, they're all selected, is go right click, per preview, bulk edit, default, done. And now it's more 2D oriented than 3D. And then for this camera angle is not, it's not being used at all. So we don't have to worry about that. Another thing you could do is if you have these, let's say there's multiple layers and these different effects, because oftentimes it's mostly going to be in your larger group effects. You can come up here, go to just timing tools. So you can, if I had a timing grid on here where you had the beats, I would deselect it, select everything within this group, and then same thing, right click above my render style, bulk edit, default, or whatever it may be, per preview default versus per model default versus per model preview select, and now it changes it. So it all depends on the sequencer. Sometimes you have to change it, sometimes you don't. And usually, like I said, it's not going to be every single effect. It should just be a few here and there. So other questions? Let's go for your chat.
I think Jonathan is next, but we have like 2 minutes.
Okay. Oh, there's down here. Sorry. If I did not get to your question and you need anything, please feel free to reach out to me by messenger or email. And I'll be more than happy to help you with anything you need. If you render per preview and use your new camera view, is there a model hidden from that view? Will that ignore that model when it renders? No, it all depends on if it's all based on the group. So for instance, it is seeing everything in this all group is getting rendered correct according to that camera angle. If I don't want a model to be part of this group to be rendered then I would delete it from this group to make sure it doesn't get rendered, or I change the camera angle itself. Mostly what your question would be is removing a model or adding a model to that group to get it to look how you want it to be. Does that help? I hope. How do we use this to wrap around both sides? Yeah, to wrap around both sides, typically you may have to create shadow models. I hate to say it. Can we create a 360 view or a 270 view? Not that I'm aware of. So for instance, if I had this garage over here covered and then also had this side covered and I wanted to look as if it's going from right across and then back, then what I may have to do is actually physically pull this out so it looks like it's in 2D and I just physically put it, hang it up in 3D, if that helps. Is this wrap effect for just visualizer only? Is there still rendered display correctly? Just visualize this adjustment. It will still render and display correctly. Okay, there we go. Yes, I answered it. So, all right, thank you for everything. Like I said, if you need to get a hold of me, Steve Petrucci on Facebook, but also magical support at magicallightshows.com. I don't want to go over any longer. I apologize, but thank you for being here, and I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.
Thank you.